and Hamilton. Okay, great. All right, yeah, we can get started.
Okay. Good evening. This is the Park and Rec Commission meeting of July 15th. And I call the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. And I'll hand it over to Marco for explanation of the digital rules.
All right. Well, thank you, Jill. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Good evening. This is the Park and Recreation Commission's July meeting. It's a virtual only meeting. My name is Marco Rivero. I am the staff liaison to the Park and Rec Commission. This meeting is being recorded for public records and will be posted on the Arlington County Commission Meetings YouTube page. And please avoid sharing any personal information that you would not like to be made public. We ask that presenters and attendees please mute your microphones if you're not speaking. During virtual only or hybrid meetings, commissioners joining virtually and who are eligible to vote must have their cameras on for the duration of the meeting for purposes of meeting quorum. For those attending via telephone, you can mute and unmute your microphones by dialing *6. The chat box will be monitored to address any technical or procedural questions during the meeting, but should not be used for meeting discussion. Commissioners should use their raise your hand function on the top toolbar to be recognized during the commission discussion, and assigned presenters may share their screens using the share content box above. As way of information, we'll be holding a public comment period. In order to be recognized, please use your raise your hand function, and each public commenter will have up to 3 minutes for public comment. Staff will signal to the speaker once the time is up. Thank you again, and I will turn it back over to Jill.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. And the first order of business is consideration of the June 24th, 2025 minutes. Do I have a motion to adopt the minutes?
I move that. I will second.
Thank you. And is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 All
Can we raise
opposed?
hands in the future?
Well, either raise your electronic hand or say aye, or give some indication. Are there any nay votes? I don't see any nay votes. Okay, so the minutes pass. Wow, that was good. We got that done. The next item for business is to re-adopt the PRC policy governing virtual meetings and remote participation in meetings. This is something that we have to adopt annually. We did it last year at the July 16th meeting. Do I have a motion to adopt the policy?
I move to adopt the PRC policy governing virtual meetings and remote participation in meetings as drafted.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Just a question. Has there been any changes in this over the last year?
No, there have been no changes to the policy during the 2025 General Assembly for the Commonwealth. There were no identified procedures that needed to be reflected within this policy that needed to be changed, so everything is the same from last year.
Thank you.
I have a very quick question, and that is, from what I gathered in the emails as well as here, there's not really much of a choice. Basically, we have to adopt the rules that follow the legislature. Just to be clear,
Correct.
like,
Correct.
okay, all right, that was my question.
It's just saying we're playing by the rules. Yeah. All right. Any other discussion?
I just
All
wanted to
right.
clarify who was the second on that? Could be anyone at this point.
I'll second
I can second. Melissa can second.
Melissa, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry. Next time we do this, please say your name first before you second. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, raise your hand either electronically or in real life. All opposed, please indicate.
8 raised
It looks like it's
hands.
unanimous, so the motion
great.
passes.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have time for public comment. We have one public commenter that I know of, that's Dr. Byrne. And I'll hand it over to Marco for the rules about public comment.
Yes, so I will recognize Dr. Byrne as the first public commenter, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. So, Dr. Byrne,
Hello, can you hear me?
yes,
Yes.
we can.
Okay, thank you. I'm speaking about the Boston One site project site plan, which you're going to later on discuss and be a letter to the county board about this. This is kind of important for your commission. The light shining through windows facing Boston Wetland Park at night will attract many moths and other insects. This will disrupt their lives and prevent them from reproducing. This is the first large building that will face a county park containing a natural area. So this is a precedent. To prevent the establishment of a harmful precedent, please ask the county board not to approve this project until it contains a site plan condition that requires all occupants of the building, of the units facing the park, to sign leases that require them to shade their windows at night. The county board can do this because the present occupant is a government agency which is saying they will have to stay for about another year. There's no hurry. The conceptual landscape plan in the 4.1 submission identifies the species of the site's trees, but does not identify those for any shrubs or perennials. This is not good. A plant list that the applicant presented at the site plan review committee meeting contains 2 milkweeds, butterfly milkweed and swamp milkweed. However, monarch butterflies lay few eggs on butterfly milkweed. Swamp milkweed often disappears within 5 years from planting when its soil dries out. In contrast, more than 80% of monarchs migrating to milkweed have fed on common milkweed, Asclepias syriaca, when they were caterpillars. Common milkweed thrives in both dry places and ditches. Therefore, please ask the county board to require the applicant to add common milkweed to the plant list. Install much of it in the bioretention area near the Boston Wetland Park and elsewhere on the site. This plant list on the SPRC committee meeting contains 15 plants that are either not native to North America or native to North America, but are not native to Arlington and vicinity. The list also contains 16 cultivars. Remove all 31 plants from that plant list. Most or all may not feed native pollinators or may spread into Boston Wetland Park if they become invasive or if they actually already are known to be invasive. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Byrne.
All right. Are there any other speakers on the call? Hearing none, I think that concludes public comment.
Okay, thank you. Now we have a very special guest. We'd like to welcome Paul Gilbert. He's the Executive Director for Nova Parks. He read in the Arlington newspaper that we had discussed a park foundation, and he offered to come and talk to us about that. But Paul, I didn't get a chance to ask you, are you open to talking about other things on Nova Parks too?
Always.
Great, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us. And I understand you have a presentation?
Yeah, I do. And so can I share my screen, or is that?
Yes,
Did
you
you
can share
unmute?
your screen.
Okay.
All right, great.
And Paul, we're having a lot of trouble hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Let's see that. Yeah.
You can
Can
see it.
everyone
Thank
see
you. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Let's see. Slideshow here. Well, do you see it as one slide, or one slide at the top and other ones at the bottom?
We see it as one slide.
Oh, great. Fantastic. That's what you need to see. All right. Again, as Jill mentioned, I had read in the paper that you all were thinking about a park foundation. And I thought I'd just share the Nova Parks experience. We had a foundation from 2004 to 2016. And then we kind of that went dormant for a while. We actually just recently got rid of it. And we have partnered with the Community Foundation, which is working out quite well. And if I could skip right to the end, I'd say that's the fundamental message is rather than inventing a new wheel, find the wheels that are around you and use them. It works well. So when we had our foundation, one of the interesting things was the foundation board members, we had a separate board of directors. They really wanted to be the park board, and that they were park advocates. They loved parks. They didn't necessarily love fundraising. So we wound up with a board of good-hearted people who really weren't very interested in raising money for the most part. And Nova Parks gave the foundation startup money, and they hired an executive director, and the executive director lasted as long as the startup money lasted, and then they were gone. So that that was our experience. I'll also share, I spoke recently with Fairfax County Park Authority, and they have a foundation that has been quite successful for many years, and they're beginning to kind of think about their various options because the county has subsidized the foundation to the tune of roughly 300,000 a year, and they've just put in their budget to cut that about in half. And you can have a successful foundation if the government is subsidizing it and covering all of its expenses. It's a little more difficult if you have to make it self-sustaining. So the the purpose of creating a foundation, having a foundation is to raise funds to do more in parks. And it's just a question of how you go about doing that. So we set up an arrangement with a partnership with the Community Foundation for Northern Virginia. They cover the whole Northern Virginia area, including Arlington, but there's also an Arlington Community Foundation, which is very well respected and does great work. I think either of those would be great options. You can see here we have a Nova Parks Outdoor Kids Fund and just a Nova Parks Fund. So when we do our end of the year fundraising solicitation, we invite the public to give to one of these funds. And we have a couple of others that are smaller, but basically you can set up any fund you want within a community foundation. If you have a specific cause, you could set up a fund for that. They collect the money. They send out the thank you letters to the donors, and then you just request those funds whenever you want. They can only be used for your purpose. So that has worked out quite well. We have also established a number of endowments, and you can see on the left side the list of endowments that the Community Foundation for Northern Virginia has. They have one on the top, which is their sort of catch-all foundation endowment for the foundation. But then there's a Temple Hall endowment, a Winkler endowment, and a Nova Parks Capital endowment. And those other funds are all funds that we have contributed specifically for purposes. So Temple Hall is a farm park that we have in Leesburg. And when we got that park, we got an endowment with it. And in a similar way, in 2022, we got the Winkler Botanical Preserve in Alexandria. That also came with an endowment. So we have, we as a government can't hold equities, but the foundation can. So by partnering with the foundation, putting it over there, they can invest in the full range of options. They have Goldman Sachs as a financial advisor. They do very well. You can see there that year to date, we've earned about 8% on those endowments, which is great. On the right side of the column, the Community Foundation, what they provide to us is the 501c3, and they, the IRS status, and also the state registration for any nonprofit that's soliciting funds. They do the 990, which is the 501c3 tax form. They do the state filings. They write the thank you letters to the donors. So when donations come in, we just get an email that says a donation came in and what fund it goes to, and they really take care of the back end. So that cuts down the administrative end of things, and the governance board. They have their own board of directors and provide that. What they do not do is actually raise the funds. But when we had our own foundation, they didn't raise the funds either. So um, it's really regardless of which community foundation you work with, you're working with a known, trusted entity in the community, and it's really the back shop. They're taking care of your filings, taking care of your letters to donors, taking care of all the paperwork side of running a nonprofit, which is considerable, and it leaves you to just focus on raising the funds and spending it for park related projects.
Do they take a fee for that, Paul? Sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry, Jill, I didn't catch that.
Is it okay to interrupt with questions? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Does the community foundation take a fee for all this work that they do?
They do. Yep.
Okay.
And it's very nominal, and it depends on the type of fund. But it's usually like 1 to 3%, depending on which fund. So I'll give you an example. The Outdoor Kids Fund is not just a bucket of money to take donations. We also do a grant program. So they reach out to all the schools in the area. They reach out to Title I schools. They take care of all the paperwork of taking in applications and reviewing them and ranking them. We make the final decision. Okay, this is great. We're going to fund the following schools. So they do a lot of legwork for us in the background, a lot of administrative work to run those grant programs. And then that grant program gets Title I schools money for transportation to go to a park and have a nature experience. Our staff comes out, runs the program, but we're good at running the program. We're not so good at reaching out to schools and running grant programs. So we tap into their expertise. So that comes at a little higher cost. If it's just a pass-through fund where you're getting donations and then spending it on parks, that's like about 1%. So it's a very economical way of doing it. I, in a previous life, ran a nonprofit, and the administrative overhead side of running a nonprofit is considerable. And so to be able to tap into the economies of scale of a well-established, nonprofit that can do all of the back end things for you is fantastic. So it is, I think, always exciting, the idea of setting up a nonprofit. I think it's important to think about what you want to accomplish. And if it's to have a funding mechanism, that can be done through a community foundation. And we're quite happy with how that's worked. It would be, the perfect scenario is you get a great board that goes out and raises all kinds of money. And I think that's a beautiful goal, but a hard thing to achieve. Many of the people that will want to serve on the Park Foundation board will be basically the same sort of folks that are on your commission. There'll be people who love parks and want to see good things happen. And they may or may not be all that interested in spending their time, effort, resources in raising funds. So anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions. In addition to our experience, I know of some other park agencies that have had varying degrees of success with foundations.
I do have a small question. Just reading over, seeing part of your presentation, reading over this community foundation documents, it talks about its environmental stuff. Do you guys do any work with like land trusts or conservation easements or in any of the like, or are you exclusively grants?
Well, so this is really working, this is just financial. But the nonprofit that I used to run was the Northern Virginia Conservation Trust many years ago. And we certainly work with land trusts. We, outside of the foundation, we also get a lot of land gifts. I mentioned Winkler that we got in 2022, where we got 44 acres of land plus an endowment. That didn't go through any other organization. It was just the land came directly to us. We chose to move the foundation, the endowment into the community foundation just because they could invest it better. And quite a few of our parks have been donated over time, but that's sort of the working the land end of it, of easements and land gifts.
So what's the last slide showing us here? It's just a summary of the returns that they're able to.
Yeah, it just shows the Temple Hall Endowment and the Winkler Botanical Endowment, and basically how they're invested and what their returns are. I was actually on a call this morning where we were going over this. So.
And so the Board of Governors of the Community Foundation is the one that approves the investment decisions of the community fund?
Correct.
Of the funds that are in the community fund. Okay.
Right.
So if you ever became unhappy with the returns, you could always take the money out, I suppose, and go somewhere else.
Well, you really can't. So once
Okay.
you have,
Good to know.
I mean, you can take the money out to use it, but you can't really take it out to just give it to someone else. So at any point,
Okay.
like for the endowments, you're allowed to withdraw 5% a year. That's sort of standard endowment stuff for the cause. Now, if it's just a donation fund, like the previous ones, the Outdoor Kids Fund and the Nova Parks Fund, that's not an endowment. It's just a pass-through fund. So basically, it's a bank account. You give $100 to the Outdoor Kids Fund, and we then say, great, give us $100. They do that and we spend it. But that's handled differently than the endowment, where you're trying to only use basically the returns from the corpus of the investment, not all of it. So we have two different types of funds: pass-through funds and endowments.
So on the endowments, if you became unhappy with the investment decisions, what would you do?
So the endowment funds are the property of the community foundation. They're off our books and on the books of the community foundation. Now, they can only be used to support what we've identified they're supporting. So with both of those, they're a single park. So it could never be spent by the community foundation for anything other than to support that park. But you give over control of the funds. So,
okay, that's right.
yeah. So, but they can invest it and we can't. So,
Right. Yeah. A public entity can't invest project funds like that.
And they're an organization that's been around for, decades and decades and is well respected, and they have professional advisors, and there's no reason why you would ever really want to take your funds out. It's all being done pretty much the same way almost any professionally advised investment fund will be invested.
Great. Wow, that sounds like a good solution that you've come upon.
It's easy because you can just focus on what you want to focus on. You want to raise money and you want to help parks, and it cuts out all of the administrative stuff. You pay a small fee, but honestly, a lot smaller fee than you could possibly do it yourself.
Right. But I've sort of been monopolizing the conversation. Does anybody else have any questions on the community foundation idea?
Jill, this is Dave. A question for Paul. how often does your Nova Parks board review the progress of the various funds and the performance of the foundation?
Yeah, so we have a meeting once a year, a Nova Parks meeting, board meeting, where we go over all of this. But at the same time, when we made this arrangement, we said, and by the way, the Nova Parks executive director will be on the investment committee. So I'm on the investment committee. That's why I was on a call this morning looking at this. But the Nova Parks board as a whole looks at it once a year as just kind of a good governance.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. And Jill, if I may, when we're done talking about foundations, I'd be happy to give a little brief update on Dominion and the WNOD.
Yeah, yeah, that's on my list.
Yeah.
If you didn't bring it up, I was gonna ask.
Joe,
But,
I see
go ahead.
Hamilton's hands up and then William.
Okay, please go ahead, Hamilton, and then William.
Oh, man, I really want to hear the Dominion thing, but I'll go ahead and ask my question.
I shouldn't have teased that.
So it looks like timing that the foundation kind of wound it down in 2016 and you set this structure up in 2016.
Yeah.
And you all did that because it gives you a bit more flexibility because Nova Parks is a broader spectrum than just Arlington. Is that kind of?
Yeah, the Community Foundation for Northern Virginia covers all the jurisdictions that Nova Parks covers. So that it was just a good natural fit for us. And
Cool.
like I'd mentioned earlier, our own foundation was active from 2004 to 2016. So 2016, we kind of, it went dormant. And I'll also mention, kind of interesting, we're just now completely killing the old foundation because that's harder than you think.
Yeah.
It takes, honestly, I think it's probably harder to get rid of a nonprofit than it is to create one. Everyone knows how to create them, but getting rid of one is challenging. So anyway,
So the advice you're driving is if we want specific projects and stuff and things of funds or drive these funds that we already have. Is that more or less what you're driving us to do it?
You could come up with whatever list of funds that you wanted. We always have, we sort of started with the Nova Parks Fund, which is just like the general bucket. And the general bucket's very useful because someone will come to us and say, I want to give this specific amount of money for that specific park. We don't need a separate fund for that. We can just say, okay, great. Give it to the Nova Parks Fund. We then contact the community foundation and say, we'd like that because the donor wants it to fund, something that we're going to do at Potomac Overlook. And great, that project is done. The Outdoor Kids Fund we created just because we really, outside of individual donors that wanted to do certain things, we as an organization wanted to do more to engage children in nature education. So we've used it for grant programs for summer camps, and now a program for Title I schools to get to parks to have nature education. But you could come up with whatever list of priorities you wanted and create funds for those, and then donations that went into those funds. It can only be used for that purpose.
So has it become sorry, William, I'm going to just follow up on that. So has it ever become a challenge to deal with donors who give for a particular park purpose? I noticed in looking over the Fairfax, program, they had maybe 30 different parks, and they were, not small amounts, but they were relatively small amounts compared to the whole park's budget. And I can imagine the administrative headache it might cause to be forced to spend that money in that way. So can you speak to that? Yeah.
And you'll notice that, we have, what is it, 35 parks. We don't have 35 funds. We could do that. We could set up a fund for each different park. We have chosen not to do that. So we have basically two main buckets. We also have one that's for some historic properties, but it doesn't have very much in it. Hasn't really caught on. But by having the Outdoor Kids Fund and the Nova Parks Fund, they are broader buckets, and that helps us use those funds better. So if we get money into the Outdoor Kids Fund, we're not saying which park it's going to be for. We're going to figure out how to use it to get children engaged with nature. And there's a number of different ways we could go about doing that, a whole bunch of different places we could do that. And the people that give to that presumably don't care too much whether it's at this park or that park. If someone wants to give a designated donation for a specific park, we direct them into the Nova Parks Fund, the general bucket, and we use it for whatever specific project they want. And Jill, to get to your question, like we have one donor I'm thinking about in particular who likes to give to a certain park, and they're very specific, and they want, the following very specific things done. And at one level, it's not as nice a donation, because it would be better to have freedom to decide where the needs are. But on the other hand, so long as the things that they want are good or fine, then sure, we can do that. They're giving us the funds to do it.
Okay, but I guess you have to agree. So
You'd have to agree if they wanted to do something you
Yeah.
didn't want to do. Yeah.
You can,
Yeah. If they said we want to build whatever, a mini golf, in some place where a mini golf isn't, we would say, no, thank you. We would say, maybe there's another way for you to spend your money, and let's help you figure that out.
Okay, William, please go ahead. I'm sorry I jumped in front of you again.
Yeah, no worries. Hey, Paul, thank you for your presentation. You gave a tantalizing hint. Can you give us an idea about Fairfax? You mentioned something about Fairfax is changing or thinking of changing. Any updates would be appreciated.
Sure. What I know about, I had a conversation with Fairfax County Park Authority, and they have been getting, and these are, I'm going to give you round numbers that I'm sure the actual number isn't exactly what I'm saying. So it's not to be quoted, but ballpark. They were getting about $300,000 a year to their foundation through the park authority, and that was being used for the administrative side. Actually, no, it wasn't through the park authority. It was through the actual county government. So the county government was giving them 300,000-ish for administration of the foundation. Foundation, again, is a separate 501c3 nonprofit, not a department of the county. And the county has decided in their latest budget to basically cut that in half. So they have a lot less money for administration, and so it's caused them to kind of think about how they could operate with less resources.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, it makes me think about, the success that the Park and Rec staff has had in garnering large donations from, for the different developments, large park developments that we've had, compared to what we would be able to do, with the foundation. You have to decide. Well, I guess neither one is a fundraising mechanism. So the fundraising part is really separate from where your administrative work is going to happen. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jill, I think it's a great
People
question.
think that setting up
point. For the Long Branch, right? Boeing made a multi-year operational commitment, right? Which presumably I believe it's sitting with the county in a fund, if you will, that's not earning the type of returns that Paul showed us, right?
I'm not sure about that. I think Jane did Jane mention in that email exchange that the county does have some funds in the community fund? I don't remember. I think there's a possibility that we have that money in a community foundation already.
Great, awesome.
So
but I don't know.
what I will mention is as a government, and this is across all government agencies in Virginia, that you're not allowed to hold equities. So you're basically, you're allowed to basically hold treasuries. So that's, you can earn some interest, but you're very limited in the tools that you can use.
Yeah, I'll have to ask Jane that. I'll put that on my question for Jane. Do we already have some community foundation holdings and with Arlington County? Okay, is there any more discussion about the community foundation and a general park foundation or anything along that line? Otherwise, we'll go over to Vienna and environs. Oh, Melissa has something. Melissa, go ahead.
Not discussion, just I'm glad that it worked out. It's glad to hear the success story with this sort of thing. So yeah, that's I want to say positive comment to end on.
Yeah. Yes, and thank you for telling us the story, because it's as you accurately read in the paper, we are sort of noodling over this and trying to figure out what the best thing to do is. So thank you.
And we all want more resources for parks. So it's great that you're looking at all those options.
Yeah.
So would you like me to tell you a little bit about WNOD?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I'll make it pretty brief, but back in November of last year, Dominion started a reconductoring where they put new lines on a section in Vienna to Dunloring, and they said there would be some tree work in the communications to the public. They basically came in and started clearing everything from one edge of the property to the other, which they have not done since 2005. And in 2005, they did it in a number of places, and we wound up with an MOU on vegetative management for the WNOD. We pointed this out to Dominion. They said they weren't honoring the old MOU anymore, and they proceeded to I'm not going to call it a complete clear cut, but it's largely a clear cut of about 4 miles of the trail. And then by March, about the time they were getting done with that, they, in a meeting, told us that their plan was actually to do this for the entire section of the trail that has power lines overhead, which is the whole WNOD is 45 miles. About 33 miles or so has power lines overhead, which would be, all of Arlington, all of Fairfax, and, 2/3 of Loudon and all of Falls Church. A very big thing. And that it was going to be this aggressive cutting. March 18th, we were able to get the Arlington County Board, the Fairfax Board of Supervisors, and the Loudon Board of Supervisors all on the same day to vote unanimously to tell Dominion to stop, to take a selective trimming policy, and to re-engage about an MOU. And Dominion put their plans on pause. I don't like the word pause because pause is not a stop. It's just a temporary thing, but pause is what they called it. They have recently started cutting, and they're going to do about five areas. One area in Arlington, I think, is about 4 dead trees, and they're going to do some replanting. It's actually the best spot in terms of their actions of anywhere else. The other areas are much more significant cutting, but they are all cutting basically directly under power lines, which is harder to argue with. We developed a new MOU that was much better than the old one, and we gave that to Dominion on April 25th, which was Arbor Day, and said, this is what we would like to see. We developed it with a landscape architect. We shared it with all the local jurisdictions in the area, got comments, and gave it to Dominion and said, this is this is the will of the region. This is what we would like. And we have yet to get feedback on that MOU. We've had multiple meetings with Dominion. The latest that I heard from them just a week ago was that we'd get comments on the MOU in about 2 weeks, so maybe another week. But it's been a difficult process because they have, I think they would like it very much to just, for everyone to lose interest and for it to just kind of go back to normal and not for them to have any requirements above and beyond a basic right of way in a rural area. That's the way they would like to treat it. We are committed to pushing them as hard and as long as we need to get to something where there's a process. It needs to be treated differently than a rural right of way where they can just cut it and walk away. We're hoping to get a lot of invasive species removal work from them and a very selective approach to cutting. So that's the summary.
Thank you so much. Did something change that created a change in Dominion's policy?
Dominion is a very siloed organization. And I'll just say in one of the meetings we had with them, which was at their Northern Virginia headquarters in Chantilly, I guess. All the folks that were involved in this cutting had never been to that building before. They were all from the Richmond area. So I don't think they really fully understood what the WNOD was. They kind of thought, so long as they weren't like blocking the path, the paved trail, that it wasn't a big deal. And you all know, we all view this as a park. It's 100-foot wide. It's 45 miles long. It's many hundreds of acres collectively. And the area that they were going to cut was would probably have been about 400 acres of forest that they would have taken out.
My God.
So anyway, I don't think they understood that it wasn't anything different than just, some other power line right of way through farmers' fields and over mountains.
Okay. So does anybody have any questions or comments on that? I want to follow up on something else about, go ahead, Alex. WDC Trails. Is that you, Alex?
Yes, that's me. So I have first a comment about the Dominion Energy and trees, and then a question about invasives. So the Dominion Energy and trees, I know that my knowledge about this is a few years old, but they used to have a pretty collaborative relationship with Arlington County. And when they wanted to cut trees, they would actually go out with staff from parks and they talk about the individual tree that they wanted to cut, and they would think about, all right, where is it going to fall? Do we really need to do this? Is this a real threat to the power line? It seems as perhaps maybe they've lost some institutional memory of these relationships, if particularly people who you're meeting with haven't even been there before. There used to be a dedicated manager there whose name I've forgotten, but he was
John Tanner.
Yes, and he was incredibly knowledgeable about the trail.
Absolutely. Wonderful guy. And he's still there. But it's a different group within Dominion that is driving we must cut everything. And so it gets back to that siloed nature that, yes, things were managed in the field quite well. And then kind of a different group within Dominion came in and said, we can't have trees. And so it's one hand not knowing what the other hand's doing.
I see. So I also wanted to talk to you about invasives a little bit. So, and again, focused on the WNOD. So a few years ago, it was probably about 2018 or so. I know Nova Park said back when Dominion Energy was easier to deal with, perhaps. Were planning on conducting a fair amount of chemical control of invasives within the corridor, and IPC, which is Arlington County's contractor, was going to assist in Arlington, and Nova Parks basically said no. We don't want you to do that. Now, invasives are a pretty substantial problem in the Washington Old Dominion corridor. It's a corridor for invasives, along with people and other organisms. And I'd like to know what Nova Parks is doing about invasives now, and whether you're willing to allow chemical control now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we allowed it before, we've allowed it since. That period of time was right after the news was blowing up about Roundup, and the court cases that had been awarded on that. But you're exactly right. We need chemical spraying. It needs to be selective, and we have a protocol that we use within our parks when we have to do that. And I think our new plan that we would like to get Dominion to agree to has quite a bit of invasive control with herbicides.
Thank you.
I'll just follow up and, can you hear me? I'll just follow up on that and say at Upton Hill, where I'm a park steward, and also at Potomac Overlook, we just appreciate so much the herbicide treatments that have worked hand in glove with the volunteer hours. We couldn't possibly have gotten that stuff out by hand.
You
It
need
was
it. You need everything you can do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't want to ignore Hamilton. Go ahead.
Just really quickly, you mentioned much better MOU. Was that were you thinking about the invasives and some of the other things? Like, what is better?
Well, the old MOU honestly was not all that great. The thing that was good was the reality on the ground. As we just heard about, the collaborative nature and the fact that there was no wholesale cutting, it was more selective. So the document, the old MOU, was not there are many faults to it, but so long as the reality on the ground was fine, it was working. So with the need to create a new one, we really sat down and thought about what kind of process we wanted from Dominion when they identified an area to cut, and then more specifically, what they were going to do to replant. So it has a much more extensive idea of what to do. So if you have to cut down a tall tree because it's right under the power lines, what you're going to put underneath it is going to be a common, there's like a formula that you can, select this many bushes and this much grass and this many smaller trees to equate to a big tree. So we will never have a tall forest under the power lines, but we can have a formula so that over time, the idea is that the WNOD would transform over time into really a pollinator focused environment where you'd have a lot of flowering grasses and bushes and flowering trees and all things that grow low enough to be compatible with the power lines, but are native species that will really enhance the environment dramatically. And you have invasive species control to keep the invasives from taking over the natives. And there's been some success in various places with invasive species control along the WNOD. But yeah, it was just it's a more comprehensive approach on both process and what then gets planted back.
Paul, I just have one follow-up question on the WNOD through Arlington. A couple of years ago, when I first joined this commission, you guys were thinking about expanding the WNOD in Arlington, and then that hit a snag and it was withdrawn. Is that still on the drawing board? Is that coming back? Is that dead?
I think it's still on the drawing board to have more capacity on the trail. The trail is very, very busy, and there it is it's like a roadway that's being well used, and it's great because it's a carbon-free roadway. Like, we want to encourage people to get out on the trail, and the WND I view as sort of it's the spine of the trail network in Northern Virginia. So it needs to be expanded, and how that happens, we will figure out. There are places where you could probably have dual trails like we have in Falls Church. Other places where you probably just don't have room for that, but maybe an extra foot or two of asphalt for greater capacity, ability for people to pass. So that I think is still very much an idea that needs to happen, greater capacity. And we basically just ran out the clock on a grant from the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority and needed to turn that back in. So to move forward, we need to figure out with the county a process and start and really design it to about 30% and then apply for grants.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a very interesting question of of whether it's a natural area or a transportation corridor.
But it's
a
both.
good problem to have in a way, but you have to figure out how to balance it. It's a great problem that we're going to be facing in so many projects as we go forward. Yeah. How to balance all that. So, okay. Well, thank you for that. And then I think, Gary, did you have something you wanted to say about?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a quick comment and then a question. The comment is I wanted to thank you for the great support that you guys have provided me and my fellow park stewards at Potomac Overlook. We have been given tremendous support by Rachel and Tyler and AJ. I mean, that's a fantastic staff at the park, and we really appreciate all the support that we have received from you guys. And I guess related to that is my question, and I'll limit this to just this park. I will not include Jill's park, but I would like your frank opinion on how well the volunteer park steward program has worked for Nova Parks.
I think it's phenomenal. So Gary and Jill, thank you so much. I don't know if the rest of the world fully appreciates the wonderful partnership with Arlington Master Naturalists. First of all, the Master Naturalists are amazing because you bring not just an interest in the environment. Everyone has an interest and appreciation. You bring knowledge, deep knowledge on what works and what doesn't, and how to improve the habitat. So it's a remarkable service that you're providing. I think Jill has set the model. If you look at what Upton Hill and the invasive species that were there, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, to where it is today, it is night and day. It is such an amazing success story. And Gary, I appreciate what you're doing at Potomac Overlook. It is a beloved park that needs even more work to restore the habitat. I think it's an education opportunity for the public because most public doesn't know when it's green that it's not good. And it can be lush and green and terrible in monoculture. So you're helping to bring back the full, ecological variety that we need to have a healthy habitat. And the model of the park steward is really just phenomenal. I wish we could just, put that on a copier and make 1,000 copies of it, because it really is a success story.
Okay, well, thank you. We would like to replicate it in some of the other jurisdictions and parks, particularly Fairfax and some of the outlying counties. So we might call upon you as our ambassador.
Well, just we have plenty of other parks, so just let us know, and we would love your help everywhere.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gary. I didn't know that you were going to elicit that. That amazing. I feel guilty. I feel embarrassed that I solicited that phrase. I didn't mean to, and it's not me who did it. It's the whole organization, the RMN organization. I didn't know what I was doing until RMN put me there, and I learned it. So they taught me. Anyway, so I would like to know if there's any other questions for Paul before we let him go. We just really appreciate you being here so much, and all that you're doing for Northern Virginia and our community. So thank you very much for reading the RL now and getting in touch. So
well, thank you. You guys are an amazing group, and I love park advocates, and that's exactly what you are. So thank you so much for all that you do. You make it easier for Nova Parks. You make it easier for Arlington Parks, and everyone appreciates your wonderful work. Thank you.
all right. Thank you, Paul. Have a nice evening.
All right.
You're welcome
I'm
to
gonna leave
stay.
now. Thanks so much.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right. So we brought him to the very end of his time. So we're still on time. And the next thing on the agenda is legislative priorities for 2026. And Gary has offered to lead that discussion.
Okay. I don't know if any of you were able to tolerate slogging through all that stuff I sent you. I almost hope that you didn't in some respects, but anyway, annually we're asked, the PRC is asked to provide recommendations to the county board in terms of state legislation to support. I forwarded to you Jill's letter that went to the county board last year. And one of them, in my opinion, one of the most important recommendations in that letter was achieved. We now have a legislation that I think might not kick in until 2027, but from that point forward, any nursery or other establishment sells non-native invasive plants has to include warnings to educate the public on what kind of nightmare they might be getting themselves into if they buy those plants. So good things can actually be achieved, even during times when it's very difficult to pass meaningful environmental legislation. And it looks like the opportunities for passing such legislation look a little brighter in 2026. So that's the hope. So we have a bit of a fast approaching deadline for getting back to the board. It's August the 15th. So we kind of need to decide tonight, if at all possible, what we would like to recommend. And the board has asked us to limit it to 3 recommendations. They've given us a bit of a template to fill out, but I can lend a hand with that once we've decided on what the priorities are. I imagine all of you have some thoughts in that respect. I know I have a few. Jill has some. Andrew had a really good one that he shared with me that maybe I'll turn to Andrew first, since he was first out of the blocks to propose something. And then maybe we can, sort of go around with the whole group tonight, and people can talk about, what they would like to see and why they think it's particularly important. So Andrew, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, thanks. My addition was relatively small. I suggest that one of our priorities should be another go at attempting the passing of HB 420, which had to do with federal parks operation and temporary funding. Most of the bills that were gone over, in my opinion, they were either about environmental resiliency, which is things like flood prevention, things that, while they are tangentially environmentally focused, aren't necessarily entirely parks focused. Again, other priorities that we wanted passed, or at least were at least very pertinent to us, like, I don't know, invasive species labeling, also actually succeeded. So when you narrow down all the legislation that was just attempted on the environmental basis in the Virginia legislative session, to take out the ones that succeeded that pertain to us, and then took out the ones that don't pertain to us, the only one I really got was that federal park operations. It's really pertinent to Arlington specifically because we don't own our waterfront at all. Places like Gravelly Point have actually been affected by government shutdowns in the past. In 2013, I don't know if it happened again in like 2018, but in 2013, Gravelly Point, they just put up barricades and blocked it because government's closed, guys. Even though you don't need any full-time staff to manage this park, we're still closing this down. So I think this would be especially pertinent to Arlington and Arlington Parks and the Arlington community as it pertains to parks. Even though we don't run Gravelly Point, we are the Arlington Parks Commission, and it's probably best to try to keep those parks open in the event of government shutdown. It would be nice to have state funds be dedicated towards that.
Okay, good. Yeah, it would be a shame, for example, if, Great Falls Park got shut down during a government shutdown and us not having access to it. So, okay, who wants to go next? Jill, do you want to suggest some?
Yeah, I think that although it might not be a direct link, that funding the Stormwater Local Assistance Fund should be a very high priority. We asked for that last year. The Chesapeake Bay Foundation always asks for full funding for that. Arlington actually used that funding to help finalize the Ballston Wetlands Park because that is actually a stormwater feature. I don't know what the vocabulary word is, but it helps the stormwater from running off too fast. And given how important stormwater is becoming in Arlington and how treacherous the rains have been in the last few days, it sort of drives that home. And so I think that should be a really high priority, along with anything having to do with invasive plants. One bugaboo of mine, it might just be a bugaboo, I don't know how it fits well within the whole big scheme, but VDOT, Virginia Department of Transportation, still uses invasive plants when they revegetate after having put in a road. And I learned this from the Blue Ridge Prism presentation I went to a while ago, so I don't know if it's still true. But anything we can do to get VDOT to stop putting invasive plants and put good plants, because that stuff just ends right up in our parks. So those are my two that I would speak to.
Yeah, and as Jill was mentioning, the legislation that we can propose, it can involve legislation that's focused on funding. So if there are programs that you would like to see funded, that would be a part of what we could recommend. So, Melissa, you have your hand up.
Yes, so I'm kind of echoing what everyone else has said, similar priorities, but especially I think, as Jill mentioned, the stormwater. I know, as Andrew said, it's not like 100% pure parks related, but as someone who has walked around a parks a lot and sees the water retention areas that involve water thirsty plants, I'll call it. There's a real term for that, I know. But that's in the latest couple days, it's been very obvious how much they're helping that area around them. So I think that kind of, to me, is one of the priorities that combines with Arlington's current priority of figuring out the stormwater issues. But also, again, repeating the sale of invasive plants, I think will help a lot, because I definitely cringe every time I see English ivy on sale at Giant, and I'm like, I just kind of want to smack it off of the ground, but I can't do that legally yet. So, but yeah, so those are my 2 cents.
Okay. Anyone else want to jump in next? Okay, Alex.
I concur also with stormwater. I mean, many of our parks are in stream valleys, and so stormwater runoff has a very substantial impact on their ecology and their access for recreational use. I'm going to chip in 2 others, support for bag bill to allow Arlington County to tax or even ban plastic bags. And even though I know this is screaming into the void for Virginia, a bottle bill.
Don't we have a bag tax already, or did I make that up in my mind? Andrew?
Just speak with me afterwards. I can talk with you a little bit more about bottle bill. I'm from Oregon, which is the first state to do it. So please message me.
Hmm.
Okay. I'm not seeing any additional hands raised, which might then create an opening for me to jump in. You know, my focus, based on spending at this point, I guess, hundreds of hours removing non-native invasive plants from our parks, is I would really love to see some funding for removal of non-native invasive plants from our parkland, and also in appropriate circumstances, private property, where non-native invasives on those properties are infecting the public land. That is often the case. In fact, in many of our parks, the reason we have non-native invasives is that jumped in from bordering private property. One park in particular of mine, we've lost probably an acre of the park to bamboo that's come over from an adjoining private property owner. So it would be great to have some flexibility on how that money could be used. And it would be nice to add as sort of an appendage to that non-native invasive removal program, a provision that tasks appropriate either universities or others who can run this kind of a study. It would be an examination of the damage done in economic terms caused by non-native invasive plants in Virginia. And I think once we have the public then aware of the incredible damage these plants inflict, then I think further down the road, we'll be much more likely to get funding to remove these non-native invasive plants from the state. So, okay, but that's the only one I wanted to speak on. So does our discussion jog anyone else's thoughts in terms of what they'd like to see? Maybe I could ask if any of you could weigh in on the ones that have been mentioned, if you're in agreement with those, or you think they should be lower down on priority wise, what have you. Any comments on that?
Oh, Daniel has his hand up.
Okay, sorry, I don't. Daniel?
Yeah, I just agree with what's already been said about the prioritizing the invasive plant removal. I think it's pretty important, so just wanted to say that.
Okay. That seems to be a very popular one. So, okay. And let's see how much time we have to discuss this. I think our discussion is supposed to be wrapped up by 8:20.
Hamilton says yes to both on the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you, Hamilton.
The question I have is, are there other groups that would also put forward the stormwater, Jill? Is that, we've got 3 slots. Stormwater is very, very important. Can we rely on that coming forward through the DES related committees, or?
I mean, the reality is that Arlington County has limited resources to spend on legislative priorities. And it's kind of like a Greek chorus. You know, I think they'll choose the ones that most people are screaming about. But I could be wrong. I don't know. But I do know Chesapeake Bay Foundation is very reliable for going after the stormwater local assistance fund. And I know Blue Ridge Prism is very reliable for going after the invasive plants. But I'm not really sure. I haven't really ever done a study on what the other commissions ask for in their legislative priorities. I think among the commissions I can think of, I can only think of forestry and natural resources and C2E2 that would bring up invasive plants. And probably stormwater as well. I'm trying to think what other commissions would bring up stormwater.
I'd be surprised if any of the others did. It's been a while since I've been on C2E2. I would imagine that many of their recommendations are going to be focused around energy conservation and production. The very complex and important rules around solar is often something that they emphasize.
And energy efficiency as well, and electrification.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of important for us to bring this up.
Okay. I'm going to mention one last one. Our local representative Patrick Hope had a bill during the last legislative session. This is HB 2638. And I'll read you a summary of that legislation. It did not pass, but it was not voted down, if I understand it correctly. So it's titled Conservation and Replacement Development Process, expands certain existing local government authority to conserve or replace trees during the development process by expanding such authority statewide. The bill allows localities to establish higher tree canopy replacement percentages based on density per acre. The bill also alters the current process for granting exceptions to a local ordinance by altering the provision that requires the granting of an exception when strict application of the ordinance would result in unnecessary or unreasonable hardship to the developer, and requiring that the locality concur with such alteration. The bill permits localities to monitor and assess the condition and coverage of tree canopies at development sites during the time period for up to 20 years of maturity of the planted trees. So there's that. I assume some people will continue to be behind Patrick Hope's bill. I would be very surprised if he doesn't bring it back up again. So in terms of, okay, should we waste or should we save our vote for something else because this is going to happen anyway? It might well fall into that category. Jill, do you think it's likely that without much screaming and shouting for it, Patrick Hope will refile his bill?
I think it's very likely. I mean, but I don't know if I would. We don't technically have to limit ourselves to 3.
Okay.
I think you can group them so that they're kind of, broad and include some of the specifics. You've gotten very, very specific there. And I think if you have a more broad approach, it could encompass multiple bills as well as multiple budget items. So you might go at it that way, just by subject area instead of by
Yeah, so one of the subject area could be tree canopy, and we can include Patrick Hope's bill. And then I think you, in your letter last year, talked about VDOT, not adhering to good tree canopy goals during its work. So maybe we could throw that in as well. So, okay.
It's just a suggestion. I know you're more of a rules follower than I am sometimes, so.
If you only knew me. You would not have said that. Okay, so we're coming up on our time. So looks like Stormwater Local Assistance Fund legislation seems to have the most support. So I will, and without, and if anyone disagrees with anything I say over the next minute or two, please speak up. So it looks to me, based on the reaction of everyone, that would be our number one priority. And I guess, I don't know if we have to rank them 1, 2, and 3.
No, I don't think we have to.
Yeah, so why don't we just say that would be one of the 3. So, and then, let's see, do we want to go with tree canopy as one of the 3?
Yes, I would support tree canopy. I think that's very important. The reason I say that is on June 23rd, it's in the 55 plus report, but the county parks closed outdoor activities after 11 because the heat index rose to 110. There's 2 components to the heat index. It's the temperature as well as the humidity. And as we all know, it's very humid here. So, and with, climate change, those days are going to increase in the, 10, 15, 20 years that we're going to be around. So, and one of the best ways to address it is tree canopy. And so I'm all for that.
Okay, yeah, good point.
Yeah, there are other ways to address it, but, we like trees in the Park and Recreation Commission, right? So,
Right. Thank you, William.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to throw that in as one of the 3. And I guess I'm biased on the next one. So, let me know if this isn't one that you would necessarily include, and that is funding for non-native invasive removal.
Yes.
Okay, so looks like
Definitely.
we got there. Okay, excellent.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, and so as Joe mentioned, we can.
Broadly stated.
I'm sorry.
Dealing with invasive plants on a broad basis, broadly stated. Yeah.
Okay.
Including the funding for it, but other things too.
Okay. Make a note of that. Okay. And do we want to just throw caution to the wind and pretend that I didn't see the 3 limitation, and I'll apologize afterwards and give them at least one more?
Yeah, go ahead and give them one more. That'd be my vote.
Okay. All right.
I don't know how other people feel. I suppose if we would run the risk that they would throw out, one of the ones we really want, but.
Yeah, well, hopefully they will give us a chance to narrow it down as opposed to just making assumptions on what our top 3 would be. But
what would that mean to throw it out? I mean, they're gonna go with whatever priorities they decide on. We're just offering them for possibilities. I don't think it's going to diminish any of the other ones by adding a 4th.
I agree.
Good point. Good point. Yeah. So, okay. Well, do folks feel comfortable then limiting it to 3 so that these have, a full emphasis and it's not watered down by adding additional ones? How would you guys like to proceed? Thumbs up?
The last year's county legislative package combined actually includes an item that says conserving and expanding tree canopy, and then it's got a long paragraph, support legislation 2, and talks about trees, but it also includes invasives, mitigate invasive species effects, and mitigate urban heat islands and their health effects. So I'm just putting it out there. If we had 4, both trees and invasives seems to make it through the process at the board level as a single item.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. I mean,
Dave,
I guess,
do you have that link handy? Could you put that link in the chat?
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, that would be helpful to have. That would give me a leg up in drafting this. Okay. Well, if we expand that category to tie together tree canopy and invasive removal, then clearly we have at least one more broad category or narrower category, whatever you want, to add. So if we add another one, what would you guys like to see?
What were the other ones that were mentioned? I think Alex, you mentioned the bag bill and bottle bill.
Yeah, we have the plastic bag and bottle bill. We also have
Wait, we already have a bag tax.
Okay.
Yeah, Melissa put that in the chat.
That is true, but we could also ask for the authority to ban them.
Well, there's that. And speaking of banning, it was voted down last time. We could ask for a ban on the sale of non-native invasive plants. Maybe I could lump that within the general category of non-native invasives / tree canopy.
I think so. I think that makes sense to put those two together.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, there is a chance that bill could pass if things break the right way in terms of the upcoming election. So I'll throw that in. But anyway, to come back to the ban on plastic bags and bottles, folks want to add that one as a category. And the other one I hadn't mentioned, but I want to come back to, and that is funding that would enable the state to operate federal parks in the event of a temporary federal shutdown. So that's also on the table. So anyone?
That bill, the federal bill performed very well in the House in 2024. I didn't see it in 2025. It passed the House. It didn't pass the Senate, which kind of is really interesting.
It is, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
96-4 in the House. I think that's what I saw. Anyway, it passed the House handily, but it's an interesting concept for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Does it happen very often?
I don't think it's ever happened that the state has stepped in and run the federal parks, but that certainly seems to be the trend that we're all heading towards.
The federal parks close very often, I guess is the point.
Well, they close every time we have a government shutdown, which we don't seem like we're going to have those in the usual way.
And then the next question is, what does it take to actually operate a park if it's not your park?
Is it just the funding, or do you also need to have like legal authority from the federal government? Does Congress have to pass some legislation in order for that to happen.
Well, I think there has to be some kind of an agreement at least.
Mhm.
I
The
imagine-
bill for HB 420 states it authorizes the governor to provide funding and execute necessary agreements to allow the temporary operation of any Virginia property owned by the National Park Service in the event of a federal government shutdown. Such assured authority shall be contingent on the U.S. Department of Interior executing an agreement which authorizes the Commonwealth to operate such property.
Okay. Yeah.
Great. So it could be very specific. It could be Great Falls Park. It could be 10 parks. It doesn't have to be everything that they own.
Mhm.
Which is,
Yeah, it's hard to imagine we would pick up the operation of Shenandoah National Park,
Exactly.
but the pocket parks along the Potomac that probably only just get trash pickup once a week, maybe.
great point. Great point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's actually, I think it's pretty interesting.
Hmm. Okay. Well, why don't I go ahead and write that one up as
Okay.
one of our categories, and then we'll take it from there. Again, I'll have to get this to the board by the 15th, although even as to that, there does seem to be a little bit of wiggle room, but I'm going to proceed based on the assumption it has to be in their hands by that date. And so
That's tomorrow, right? No, 15th is today.
August 15th.
August 15th.
August,
Sorry.
August 15th, yeah.
I was like, that's going to be hard for you to do that.
Yeah.
You still have some time to mull
Yes.
things over, for sure.
Yeah. Sorry.
Just copy one from last year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've
Thank-
got stormwater funding, invasives / tree canopy, VDOT thrown in to that as well. And then the state taking over federal parkland in the event of a federal shutdown. Do we want to leave it at that?
Gary, even though the county might combine them, I really think that we should consider the tree canopy and the invasives separate priorities, just to make sure they realize that we consider both of those to be really important. Let them decide that they want to combine them if they want to, but I don't think we should do that just because they have done it in the past.
Okay. I'm happy to proceed that way. And so we'll send them forward. But I won't number them, so maybe they won't.
That'll trick them.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think I've run over time here, so we'll have to wrap this up. So, okay. Well, I'll set about the task of writing these up, and thank you for the brainstorming session. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your leadership, Gary. That's not an easy job, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for herding cats, Gary.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so next up is the staff report. Mark is going to tell us why we're going to Gateway Park instead of the trail.
Yes, so one change of venue, I guess. So for the August field trip, we spoke with staff who are leading the Arlington Natural Surface Trails study work. They're actually going to be kicking off second engagement of that process sometime in the fall, and that may include an opportunity to engage with the community on site during, tours of trails or of other sorts of locations where people can get a sense of where, this study or how this study is impacting what's existing there today within the county. So as part of that work, staff asked that, we table our field trip or trip for the trail study work for a later date, or couple it with something that could be done either through the PSMP Implementation Advisory Committee work that's being done as well, or at a future meeting. So all of that to say that that's work that is ongoing, and that the staff that's working on that study will likely be hosting something for the community or for our commission and others in the near future. So with that being done, we've decided to move forward with another activity, and that is a tour of Gateway Park. And actually, the project managers for the master plan, both Jeremy Smith and Max Hewart, were happy to host that tour, providing us essentially the conditions that are existing at the park today and a summary of what will be provided as part of the park master plan, designed further and then obviously constructed. Another thing that I remember Joe and I and Gary have discussed previously too is discussing that park with, in its relationship with other area developments that's going on. So how does it affect, or how it's being affected by other site plans that are nearby or other public space projects that may be coming by in the future, including the Arlington Boathouse project. So getting a sense of how the project will be impacted, not only as part of its redesign, but also as part of other things that are going on within the immediate vicinity. So it should be a really great tour. We're going to be starting off at the interim dog park area on the west end of the park at 6 p.m. And then that tour will likely last about an hour. I think previously commission members sometimes gathered afterwards either for a bite or for a drink or whatever. So Roslyn's a great place for that if you guys are interested in doing that. So there are going to be opportunities to engage afterwards as well. So just wanted to detail all of that.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions about that, Marco and the staff did consult with Gary and me, and we did agree that this was what we should be doing. We didn't want to get ahead of where the staff was comfortable by having a tour, in advance of when they were ready. So I hope there's no ill will there.
I think Hamilton has his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Hamilton.
I was just enthusiastically. It's so much more convenient to me because that's exactly my bike trail home. But also, could you explain? They're wrecking the whole Marriott area there. Is part of the discussion going to be how the new Gateway Park is going to interrelate with that whole development? And
Yeah,
Joe's
so
nodding her
that
head,
could be
so I assume the answer is yes.
that could be a question in terms of how we can discuss the park itself, but also how it affects, the different areas that are surrounding it. I think there have been actually 2 or 3 different site plans that have come forward in the last maybe 6 or 7 years, including one that's going to be going to the board in July, that have essentially affected how this park will be laid out, or not necessarily laid out, but how it would be impacted by these other developments. So yes, that would be a question that you could certainly ask the staff in terms of how that could be playing into this.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else on the staff report or questions about Gateway? All right, now we're on member reports. Thank you, William, for that really good report on the 55 plus. And we'll be talking about the site plans later. So does anybody want to, there's one thing I wanted to bring up on the Walgreens site. They called the site plan committee meeting, and neither of the representative or the alternate can attend. So I'm going to attend, but for Dave and Melissa. But Dave and Melissa, I need to get with you one at a time, of course, because I didn't go on the tour and I haven't studied the materials, and they called it on 1 week's notice or 2 weeks notice. So I just wanted to let you know. And is Nelson here? Nelson's not here, right? Okay. All right. So
No. Hey, Joe.
hello. Oh, Nelson is here. Did we need to
Yes.
write a letter on Shirlington House? That's going to the board this Saturday, right?
Yes, so that was a few months ago at this point. It was a um,
Okay,
very minor site plan, and they were not planning to come to our commission to discuss at
okay.
all like they do on other ones that have a bigger impact. And so, um, seems to be a nice project, but I can write something up quickly on that, but I don't think a letter's necessary.
Okay, yeah, no, we just rely on your judgment. I just wanted to be sure that you made a decision. And it wasn't just a, whoops, we forgot about it. Okay, good.
Nope. Yeah.
Good, good, good.
Jill, jumping in
Jill,
real quick.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
just a note is that Dave went on that Walgreens walk. I was unable to attend, so we can chat. I just won't be able to say much. So just you might get more info from Dave than you would me.
Okay. All right. And William, did you want to say something? Your hand's up.
Yeah, Jill. Regarding cooling centers, Marco might have information on it, but I'd be curious to see if anybody actually used them. Apparently, some of the problems are that, counties build cooling centers, but nobody shows up because they don't know about it, or they can't get there because they don't have transportation. So it's great we have cooling centers, but it'd be interesting to find out from the department, did anybody actually show up? I'd be curious.
That's
Okay.
a good question. I don't have personal experience either with the data or knowing if people have been using them, but that is something that we could raise.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marco. Thank you, William. Melissa, your hand is still up. Did you have something more? No. Okay. All right. Anything else on member reports? Okay, now we'll go to other business. First item for that is the county transportation vision and goals letter. Thank you, Daniel, for writing up a letter. That was circulated. Does anybody, Daniel, do you want to introduce the letter or say a few words about it, and then we'll have discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I basically covered it in my email that I sent out, but more or less the county board is considering the updated vision and goals for Arlington's transportation future. They're, I think, considering it this weekend. It's gone through a lot of public engagement, and the advisory group that was created, that's made up of different members of different commissions, had plenty of opportunity to engage with staff on the creation of these vision and goals. And overall, they're pretty broad, but I think they communicate mostly what they need to in terms of how the county should be looking to create a transportation plan for the next 20 years. There was one bit of a hiccup that I definitely noticed, and that a lot of other members agreed with me. The Planning Commission basically was the final commission that had a say in terms of what's going before the county board for these vision and goals, and they took out a phrase basically talking about how it's important for the transportation plan to work for everyone without needing to utilize a car, basically. And they felt that language was, reductive or something like that. So they wanted to remove that language. And I personally definitely took issue with that, and a lot of other people in the advisory group. And I'm sure people here at this commission also were kind of troubled by that, because it's important for planners when they're considering how to, build a transportation future here in Arlington to, reduce our usage of cars whenever possible, reduce those fossil fuel emissions, all that stuff. So we basically in our letter talked about the need for the county board to consider restoring that language, because it's super important for people to use several modes of transportation besides vehicles, and not have to rely on cars to get them from point A to point B. And there's also a brief point at the end of the letter where we talked kind of about something that we discussed in our commission, internal commission meeting, just about connecting transportation options for people to our riverfront, because a lot of great nature areas. And I also referenced the case study of Atlanta. They have a pretty cool program that they have over there. So, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your leadership on that. Adam, your hand is up.
Yeah, I was just gonna like, strongly back the asking for them to put the car dependency language back in there. And I'm curious to know what was your understanding of the thrust behind getting that off of there, because I mean one of the things is, I mean, the county's for a long time has been a big supporter of going car free, and it just seems very odd that all of a sudden planning commission decided that it wasn't important. But anyway, I'd be curious if you have any more information on that, but definitely strongly back the need to ask them to put it back.
Yeah, so we weren't given a ton of insight. And beyond like going back and looking at what the planning commission basically said, my understanding was that they didn't want to be exclusionary for people who utilize vehicles for their day-to-day transportation. And I think they wanted to be as open-ended as possible. I think they sort of based this on the fact that we're very inclusive in other areas of the vision and goals. So there's not really a need to specifically call out vehicles. I personally disagree with that.
Anybody think of the poor oppressed car owners? My goodness.
Yeah, that's the angle that I'm coming from personally, Andrew. So
Yeah, I watched the video and I thought it was a kind of a brief discussion, sort of at the end of a long meeting type thing. So anyway,
who is the commissioner that proposed removing it?
it's I forgot her name. I think it's the chair of the planning commission.
Yeah, and I will also note the Transportation Commission also had input on this, and I think they came up with something similar. I'd have to go back and look at it. But yeah, it was a bit surprising, and honestly, a lot of commission or advisory group members were a bit surprised by the removal of that language and definitely expressed to staff their concern about that. So I think it's important that we send this letter out and get the county board to recognize that a lot of people feel it's important to have language specifically calling out the need for us to reduce our reliance on cars. So
right, because it goes to the decisions that we end up making that and that's so weird. Using inclusive language as if we're saying car people are bad people. That's not what the language says.
There wasn't anything like that. No.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, I mean, that's what I'm saying. That there's what's the real concern there? I mean, is it the same people who are saying that introducing kids to things that are uncomfortable is not something we want to do? I mean, is it uncomfortable for car owners to hear that we want to reduce our dependence on cars? Is it uncomfortable for them to hear that?
I don't know, but it's uncomfortably close to the end of our meeting to get
into information
about what other people might be thinking. So let's stick to what we know, okay? All right. So Daniel, it sounds like you have pretty firm agreement that we should send in the letter that you drafted. Does anybody disagree? Speak now. Okay. Thank you so much for your leadership, Daniel. We really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay. Leadership, succession planning, and recruitment. So tonight we have to say goodbye to our commissioner who has been serving with us for 6 years. Please join me in saying thank you, Neil Hunter, for your amazing service. We will miss you. We hope to see you soon on the Forestry Commission or the Planning Commission or both. Who knows? So thank you for your service. Do you have any words of wisdom you want to impart to us as you leave, or?
Yeah, 6 years flies by when you're having a great time, I suppose you can say.
So with Neil departing, we're really going to miss you. We need to think about recruitment. And one of our guest speakers of the last few months pointed out to me that we have almost no women on our commission compared to what it used to be. So Gary is married to a soccer woman and he's working on recruiting. We also don't have a soccer person on the commission at the moment. So thank you to
Oh,
Gary.
well.
He's working on a soccer woman. Maybe we'll get a soccer woman to recruit. But seriously, please, scour your contacts. Think about what organizations you belong to, because we will need to replace Neil and maybe a couple other people as we go. I will also say that we have a candidate who has made an application and we are processing that. His name is John Ford, and he is the most recent president of the Civ Fund for Arlington. And also, I need to say, I will be hitting my 6-month mark in June of next year. And I will be ending my 2-year term as chair at the end in December of 2025. Gary is still thinking about whether he really wants to be chair or not. And so the opportunity to serve as chair or maybe vice chair is available. So I would really like to hear from you if you're interested in serving in either of those positions. It's a lot of fun. It's not a heavy lift, really, compared to what some things could be.
You get to work with me a lot too, so that's,
Yeah.
a negative or a plus, whatever you guys want to think about that.
And you get to keep, Marco gets to keep you out of trouble, which he's done for me so many times. So please be in touch about that. I want to, let's see, we want to talk about the Ballston 1 site plan letter. We sent out the proposed draft. I made one last little change in the one I sent out yesterday. We had comments from Mr. Byrne, Dr. Byrne. Does anybody have any discussion on the Ballston 1 letter? Andrew?
I like the letter. I think you did a great job with your edits to it. Yeah, I think your letter's good. I don't see any need for changes.
Any other discussion?
I'm also satisfied with the letter.
Thank you for drafting it. You too. All right, and thank you. Okay, we'll send that in, and then I'll turn to Claire. We have the 1 Roslyn site plan letter. There was a version of it that went out at 7 p.m. and a revised version that went out at 10 p.m. It's the 10 p.m. version that we're proposing be approved. Did anybody have any discussion? Claire, did you want to introduce that or say anything? Did anybody have any discussion on that letter?
Sure. I'll just note that the revised version takes out the pedestrian bridge conversation and focuses more on ground level safety precautions for pedestrian crossing. So that was the edit there. And then commenting on energy efficient systems, supporting the $2 million community benefits payment to the Department of Parks and Rec, and ensuring that we have a final landscape plan that is presented to us, but applauding the overall connection to the park and the biophilic design and sustainability elements highlighted.
Great, thank you, Claire. Is there any discussion? Oh, Adam has his hand up.
Just a quick question. What was the reason for taking out the specific mentioning of the pedestrian bridge?
Should I take that one, Claire?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so we got a bit distracted by the conversation that was introduced by the Civic Association that about that pedestrian bridge. That was never part of the design that was introduced. And all the staff members and all the other commissions who looked at it did not think that it was should be supported. So given that it was outside the scope of the plan, we thought it was a little bit beyond our, in other words, we didn't want it as a brouhaha.
Okay, thank you.
Is that fair? Is that fair, Marco? Okay. Okay, so we'll send those letters in. Thank you. So we've got a lot of hard work that's been done this month. Okay, the last thing I want to bring up is, and I'm only going to make you listen and think, but I want to have a different procedure for the site plan work. I think we can do a lot more streamlining and have a lot more uniformity and be able to participate in the site plans with more knowledge and confidence if we change some of these procedures. So I've been discussing this with Marco and Gary, and I have a general idea of what I would like to suggest. So I'm going to suggest it and then ask you to think about it, and then we can discuss it at the next in September, at our September meeting, which is good because there are no site plans going on, no letters we have to write before then. But essentially, once a person has been appointed as a representative to a site plan, Marco has offered that the DPR staff would be willing to meet with that person or those two people and just give a general overview of what the public spaces aspects might be, what the general process is for the SPRC, you know, especially for people who've only done one or maybe not more than one. So that would be a really welcome addition. Second, I thought it would be a good idea to come up with a template letter that the person who is assigned to the site plan would kind of fill in the blanks, like, you know, is there bird-friendly glass, you know, whatever. And at the end of the day, the letter would be a list of the concerns that our commission has with the project. So we already have that matrix, so we can kind of turn that into a template of sorts. And then my idea further is that this draft letter would be circulated to the PRC members for discussion at the closest monthly meeting of the PRC to the SPRC meeting, so that it can be discussed and we can have a robust conversation in the PRC before the SPRC meets, so the PRC person would be advancing the positions of the PRC. And further,
Can we get this in writing by any chance before the September meeting?
Yeah, but I wanted to introduce the concepts first. Yeah, and maybe you're going to shoot me in the foot and I won't bother to send it out. But and then further, I thought it would be a good idea if maybe the chair of the PRC, maybe myself, whoever's chair, would then send the letter once the PRC has thought about it to the SPRC, so we have a record on the SPRC as to what our positions are. And then finally, as the discussions progress to the SPRC, if there's a need to change the position or things develop, then that would be reflected in our final letter to the county board. And I see Marco has his hand up.
Yeah, Jill, I just wanted to piggyback off of the just that initial meeting that could be had by staff and the persons that are assigned to any particular site plan project. I've been speaking with Walter Gonzalez as well, who does a lot of the tracking for the various site plans within DPR, and he and I actually will be touching base early this fall to see how that potential part of the process could go for any commissioner who would be interested in learning about the project, about the process itself, from a DPR and public space standpoint. So more information to come with that as well.
Thank you for that offer, but it sounds like it was well received. Gary, you have your hand up?
Yeah, and I just wanted to bring up the example of where Mark really provided me a lot of help. I have a SPRC involving a very, very large apartment and condo complex that's going to be going up in Pentagon City. It's the River House complex, and they'll be adding somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 new residents to that neighborhood. But it's been quite challenging to gather information about certain things that are important to assess the impact that development will have on the adjoining Virginia Highlands Park. And Marco was very helpful in pointing out who I need to reach out to get answers to those questions outside of the SPRC meeting itself. And there are going to be some of these SPRCs where it's not just one and done. For example, this River House one, I think the next SPRC meeting is number 5. And we still really haven't gotten into some of the meat of it. So anyway, also Marco pointed out that somewhat buried, although maybe not to Marco, but it was to me, within the presentation documents that you can find on the SPRC site for that particular SPRC, the agenda for the upcoming SPRC meeting. And I know for me that would have been very helpful to have, and now I will have that because I'll make a point of making sure I look for that to prepare for the upcoming SPRC meeting. And Jill, you may have mentioned this, but I think you were talking about having this letter done before or in advance of the SPRC meeting that deals with open public spaces. Because as I mentioned, there are some SPRCs that the first meeting may not touch upon that at all. So do I misunderstand that, Jill, or?
That's the idea, but it's not always possible. I mean, like when they schedule it 2 weeks with 2 weeks notice. So.
Yeah. Okay.
So does anybody have any comments on what I said or what Marco or Gary said? I know it's late and I don't expect us to have a robust discussion, but if you're not killing it, then I think I will send out Adam has his hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're going toward, I think would be really helpful, I think, because I know when I've served on these things, I didn't know who were the key people to talk to and all that, and the other thing too, but like what issues the staff know about since they've been involved with it, that I think is really helpful too, because this way we don't have to like discover it for ourselves when we attend the meeting. We'll know ahead of time. I think your goal of being able to have the PRC write a letter that would go to the SPRC when they meet, I think is probably a bit ambitious. But so I wouldn't try to push too hard on that, because I think it would be really hard. But I think the idea of definitely having some pre-knowledge of what's going on, and at least be able to bring up those issues to the whole PRC maybe prior to the meeting, so that when we go into the meeting, we might not have a letter, but at least we'll have an understanding of what the other PRC members are interested in. So
that's what I'm going for, some way to inform the PRC members so that we can have a robust discussion before so that we can properly represent the PRC at the SPRC. Hamilton?
Yep. I just love the idea. I think what you're doing is creating a structure, get the information, create a form so we can, I'm assessing what does it have to do with the neighbors? What does it do with this? What does it do with that? This is really a fabulous way just to make it easier for all of us to focus on the task when we're looking at a site plan. So this is a great idea.
Thanks. Okay, it's 9:01. Do you want to keep talking about it or do you want to adjourn?
I'll give comments when I see a written version of this.
Okay.
But I just think the devil's always in the details. I think it's probably a good idea to add more structure to the SPRC compared to currently, but all the devil's in the details. But I do look forward to seeing what you're going to come up with on this,
Okay.
because I there's definitely going to be quite a bit of thought put into it because you've been around you know the process well.
Not as well as I wish I did. Anyway, it's even after 6 years, you know. Anyway, okay, so I don't see any more hands. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion.
That was Adam who moved and Gary seconded. And I just want to thank you all so much for all your wonderful engagement with these topics. It's really great to be in this work with you. And Luke, thank you for sitting through the whole meeting. We didn't get to talk, but it's good to see you. All right. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
I know.
All right.